So we're going to talk about what it takes to be successful in your profession, whatever it might be. People should plan their careers.
And this is actually something that should be taught at university level as well.
Then maybe I'll further educate myself, maybe do a master's degree if I don't have one, or get a professional qualification. Everyone's focused on résumé, but over time, it's the body of work that should speak for you rather than just a piece of paper. And I think this will be an interesting conversation and will help people to hopefully, go to the next level in terms of achieving career success. Welcome to the IOP podcast. I am Amir Qureshi and meet my friend
Shahriyar.
So Shahriyar, this is a special series we're doing on building your career, especially given the uncertainty around the world. I think all of us need to take a step back and look at how we are going to excel and achieve success in your career, in our careers rather. So we're going to talk about what it takes to be successful in your profession, whatever it might be. And I think this will be an interesting conversation and will help people to hopefully, go to the next level in terms of achieving career success.
Yes, and I think, particularly if we can bring local context into it as well when we have these discussions and as we continue with this series, because I think it's important, because a lot of these principles that you can read about, on platforms like LinkedIn, etc., a lot of those don't apply in Pakistan. So we would like to sort of have a local flavor, or people at least who've worked locally and can talk about these things in detail. So I'm excited about this.
Yes, and I think one of the things that people often overlook, especially in Pakistan, is everyone who graduates and so on and is looking for their first break. They want a job, and often the first ever job that they get, they end up having to take it. And there are many reasons why they can't say no, but they don't sort of think more broadly about how that will affect the rest of their career, the rest of their life. So one of the important things I like to suggest is people should plan their careers. Think about, okay, I do this particular type of role for so many years, then maybe I'll further educate myself, maybe do a master's degree if I don't have one, or get a professional qualification. So you really need to have a clear roadmap for how your career is going to take shape. Now, things don't always go to plan, and things may change, circumstances may change, but you really need to start with an overall plan. What do you think?
I agree. Although when you're like 22 years old and just graduated, it's a little difficult to kind of look that far ahead, because you feel fairly powerless, in terms of the task that's in front of you. And you're only focused on just getting that first job, and then you breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, that's done. But you're right. Generally, as a society, we tend not to like planning things. At all. We're much more impulsive that way. But I think we need to transition. And this is actually something that should be taught at university level as well, as to how to plan your career, what to do, what kind of moves you want to make.
I think some of the good universities that do actually talk about this. But of course, in Pakistan, we do have a shortage of good entry-level positions, which makes it difficult for people to be so structured like they might be in a more developed countries. But, we were discussing and listening to some of the really well-known experts in this area of career development, professional development. And one of the things they say is, don't craft a resume, build a body of work. And that really resonates with me, because everyone's focused on résumé, but over time, it's the body of work that should speak for you rather than just a piece of paper in which you're highlighting your achievements or success. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that if you think of it as a piece of paper that's going to get me a job and move me to the next level, you're going to struggle. But if you look at every opportunity as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to contribute and build your skills, because at the end of the day, it's your skills that are going to get you up the ladder or across the ladder, or whichever way you want to move, laterally or vertically or whatever. And the broader your skill set is, and that shows when, the resume is a record of what you did. right? And unfortunately, or just on a side note, if you read a lot of resumes in Pakistan generally, people tend to list their job description. Responsible for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which I think is an absolute mistake. Every time I see a resume which has that, I discard it because I want to see what you've done. You can write 3 points in there instead of 13 and say, did this, increased sales by 7%, grew market share, whatever it is, things you actually did, achievements. So as long as you're focused on what what you're getting to or what you've achieved, and not what you're doing.
So the achievements should be highlighted, but just keep one thing in mind though, with the advent of AI, most of these CVs that you write are not going to be looked at by a real human being till much, much later in the piece. And they're always looking for the keywords. They're matching with the job for which they're actually recruiting to see whether there is a match or not. And many CVs get rejected very, very quickly. And so you get an instant rejection. And I've had many of those in my time as well. But in terms of starting, when I was starting my career, I was very clear that I wanted to be a chartered accountant. I wanted to work for the big firms, especially early on. But when I was graduating, I didn't get offered a job by one of the big four. They rejected me. Actually, all of them rejected me. Can you believe I never get rejected? Only the girls used to reject me when I was young, but anyway, that's another story. So rejection after rejection, but one of the big banks offered me a job. And I had just started in the graduate development program, and within the 4 or 5 weeks, I was able to get a job from Deloitte and didn't have to think very hard about giving up the job in the bank, even though it paid more. And it was in a place like Sydney, so on. But I decided, no, I want to pursue the professional path. So I gave up the job in the bank and joined Deloitte, and never really had any second thoughts about it. I wouldn't want to have been a banker. I know you worked in banks, but you have to have that sort of understanding. It is about what you want. And I think in my own mind, I was very clear. Have you had similar experiences early in your career?
Yes and no, because I think I was, I did my MBA, and I wasn't very good at, the finance part of it. So I knew I'd never be going into finance, but I would be, more on sales and marketing and business development and stuff. So, and I started at Nestle, moved from there to Citibank, and even though it sounds like, I was a banker, but yes, technically I was, but, I was in the credit cards. We launched credit cards in Pakistan, the first mass credit card. Went from there to Coca-Cola in different countries, and then so on. So my approach generally has always been to look at every opportunity and see an opportunity for growth and to learn something new about a new industry. So going from selling, dairy products to financial products to beverages, and then so on. I went into supply chain, I went into consulting, real estate, ran my own health food business, food service company, oil and gas, so it's kind of run the gamut of that. And basically just continuing to build, not with that much conscious planning, but in terms of embracing every opportunity as it came and going after that opportunity and saying, okay, I may not know that much about this, but I'll jump in and learn as I go.
And I think the idea is that after several years of doing this, when you look back, you have actually built a body of work. And in terms of moving to your next project or next job, you should be able to showcase, highlight this list of achievements, not just the job description, but the achievements you had. When I look back at various things I've done, one of the more interesting ones, again, has nothing to do with my expertise as an accountant or a financial advisor to people and so on, is I was asked to be the brand ambassador of Pakistan's first ever Kabaddi League.
And interesting.
I accepted because it gave me a chance to be on PTV Sports for hours on end. I was like live on air for 4 or 5 hours every night for almost 10 days or something like this. But it really sort of helped me to overcome some of the issues I have in terms of presentation skills, communication skills. I was speaking to millions of people simultaneously. Sometimes I was messing up, sometimes I was doing a great job. But terms of looking back, it's just one of the highlights of my life to being able to do something on such a massive scale. And prior to that, yes, I had done television, but nothing of that scale and nothing live to that extent where, there was like 20 cameras staring at you, 20 people yelling instructions, but you managed to deal with it. And that's how you build this body of work. And it's got nothing to do with my professional expertise, but at least I can say I've done that. Another thing they talk about in terms of building a career is that raw talent is overrated. Persistence is underrated. I think there's a lot that has been said about this. What are your thoughts?
I think that's completely true, because what we tend to do is we valorize, the exceptions. If somebody is exceptionally talented as a musician or as an artist or as a mathematician or something, and we look at those exceptions and say that, went ahead because of talent. But what you tend not to see is the people who've been doing it year after year after year after year after year, and you see the end result, you don't see the effort. And at the end of the day, it is far more important to be persistent at something than to be really, really talented and not do the work. Because regardless of what we may see these days on social media and instant success and this, that, and the other, there's no substitute for consistent hard work. Whatever you're doing, if you're an artist, fine. If you're a musician, fine. But you have to consistently work at it. The myth of the genius is nothing except that it's just a myth, because there are so many of these geniuses floating around who never did anything because they didn't have the dedication to work hard at it.
Yes, and I think your examples about music or musicians or singers, the amount of practice behind the scenes stuff that they do before they actually can perform in public or before they get that big break, and then everyone thinks what a genius, but it's really the hard work, especially in the classical music. There's a lot of practice, a lot of training that goes on. So persistence is definitely very, very important. People talk about grit. I think some of the American authors talk about grit. In fact, there's a book called Grit. And that also is talking about persistence and sticking at it. If you do that over a long period of time, you will have success.
No, absolutely. And I think, the one other thing that, to put a finer point on the action versus planning, it's great to plan, but you have to take action. At some point, the planning is not going to get things done. So once you've made your plan and decided, and it could be a plan that you made in a day or in 6 months, but then you have to take action. And I think your example of becoming a Kabaddi broadcaster, even for you took action. You were probably extremely scared and insecure about doing it, but you did it.
Yes, and we all get nervous even to this stage when you go to present to a large audience, you get nervous, but you have to overcome that fear. So, fear is, we all feel it, we all get anxious, especially before any big presentation, big project that we're completing or a report that we're handing in, but you've just got to get over it. So action is the best way to, I suppose, overcome anxiety, tension, stress. And really, it is about action rather than planning. We can spend years planning, writing documents, doing analysis, but until and unless we jump in. Talk about this IOP podcast. We could have been writing a strategic plan, which sadly we don't have. But what did we do? We just jumped in. And I know lots of people are watching it. Well, I'm sure you are watching it. So it was just a case of taking action and seeing what happens.
Yeah, it was just a 20-minute conversation, and we said, let's do this, and and here we are. And I hope that as we grow into this, we'll build this into something, much more interesting. Bring other people in, experts from the corporate sector and all. And I hope that eventually we end up adding value. As our original thought behind this was not commercial. We're not doing this for clicks and this, that, and the other. So I'm really excited that we kicked this off.
Yes, and it's a case of taking action, right? Another thing they say in terms of building a successful career is asking for advice. Now, of course, we are not professional podcasters and everything, but since we started, we have spoken to so many people who've helped us. Everyone from the crew that helps us film the podcast, people who edit, they actually give us ideas and we have to listen. So in a career sense, you have to find the right people who will give you advice and ideas. The other thing that I like to sort of highlight is you don't have to take everyone else's advice. Sometimes people in Pakistan, we have a lot of people offering advice, free advice actually. Even the taxi driver will give you advice. The guy selling you, or cutting your hair will give you advice, the hairdresser. You can listen to them, but you don't always have to act on it. Not everyone has your best interest at heart. So you have to be a bit more selective about who you accept advice from.
That's true, and you're right. I think we are a very advice-giving culture. Whether be it family or strangers you meet or anybody, everybody's got an opinion, and that's fine. And I agree that we need to kind of structure our approach in a way that we're open to advice, but relevant and good advice. So sometimes you have to do the sifting process and say, okay, yeah, here are 10 things somebody's told me, these 3 interesting, the other 7 not so much.
Yeah. So let's just recap then. In terms of building your career, we've talked about the fact that you need to have an overall plan, right? So if you're wanting to be a chartered accountant, there's a certain approach. If you want to be a doctor or doctor specializing in certain things, you got to have that level of clarity. Now, sometimes you may not get that till you've done a few years of actual work, but you need to be thinking about the next move, the next step, or the next job that takes you into the role which is in line with what your overall goal is. We've also talked about the fact that raw talent isn't always enough. You need to persevere. You need to show some grit in order to succeed. And action beats planning. You really need to act rather than just plan. Planning is extremely important, and we could spend hours talking about the importance and the necessity for planning. But there comes a point when you actually have to jump in and take action. And finally, we talked about the fact that you should ask for advice. Have a mentor, have a coach, someone who will help you, who has your best interest at heart, who will guide you and help you to become more successful. And be selective about who that person is. You don't want to discuss your problems, your issues with just about everyone, but there are people who can be very helpful.
I think that it's just, all I would say is that we need to be much more conscious about building our careers rather than just sort of letting things drift as they come. So it's a more and more competitive world now. There are 1,000 applicants for every job out there. So those people who plan well and take action and have built a body of work, they will be able to get ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sharyar. We'll be back with another episode in the Building Your Career series. So join us then. Until then, take care. Thank you for joining us.